Good morning. I think I am the last in the topics to brief. I may have done that on purpose. My name is Jason Ferguson, if I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you. I am here to talk briefly and hopefully factually about the coronavirus, which certainly is a big topic in the news. I usually judge the tone of the country based on what my middle schoolers come and tell me what they talked about on the bus each day, and this is definitely one of those topics. Just to let you know a little bit about me and how I fit into multiple organizations here, I am a family physician. I am a primary care doctor. When I am not in clinic, I am serving as a division surgeon. And what that means is that I am the chief medical advisor to this gentleman, Major General Minnis, really on population health and the health of his force, which also includes our family here at Fort Drum. Advising him on numerous topics every week, and this is really becoming one of them very quickly in the last 2 or 3 weeks. By proximity, I'm also a consultant to Colonel Lucas and the Garrison Command Team as far as, again, health welfare as it relates to services and people here within the garrison. And then the other big player that I would like to acknowledge and to point out in the room today is our Guthrie Medac Command Team, who is represented today on a weekly basis. Really, I am a bridge and kind of liaison with them as they house the medical resources and manpower and subject matter expertise that affects our health and welfare every day for both the force here as well as deployed. We do have deployed units which are asking questions and having to deal with this issue, as well as, more importantly, our family and friends here at Fort Drum, New York, who are very near and dear to the hearts of our soldiers. So really my primary message before I give any factual information from the eyes of a physician, I would like to let everyone know that this is a huge topic for all of those organizations, for the command and for the post of Fort Drum. And being in several working groups and conversations over the last 2 weeks, it's at every echelon, as you know, but at FORSCOM, the Department of the Army, the regional health commands, and all these entities are really trying to work together to try to, again, lower the risk for all of our troops and our family members. It is a priority. So with that, I am going to, please, next slide, present you information. One more slide. Thank you. I'm going to present information that I have collected from sources that I think is reputable, accurate, and information that I have had to analyze so that I can give the best answers that I possibly can to my patients. Okay. And so if you and I were in an exam right now and we were answering one-on-one questions about coronavirus, this is what I would tell you. Number one, what is it? Coronavirus 19, also known as COVID, it is a new and novel strain of coronavirus. You may not be aware, some people are really shocked when I tell them that the coronavirus, generic form, there's many strains of them. They have been for decades, if not, are in the time frame that we've been able to test for viruses within our communities and all over the globe. And everyone in this room does know them. You know them as culprits of the common cold. Okay. You also, if you remember back to 2002, 2003, if you're old enough, you'll remember the SARS outbreak. SARS is a coronavirus. It was a novel and new coronavirus at that time. Believe it or not, COVID-19 is very structurally similar to COVID, or to SARS. And we are all at the same time, your Centers for Disease Control and the WHO and the subject matter experts are very much studying history and the course of SARS, which did fizzle out after about a year. But they are actively trying to compare it to something that they already know. Okay. So, there's a lot of news about coronavirus. It is everywhere. It's on social media. It's on the bus to school. And so I realize that some of that information is accurate, some of it is not. A lot of it is emotionally charged. And this is a subject that in nature, because it is new and unknown, it's going to provoke a lot of fear and anxiety. And so I think those feelings are valid. But hopefully what I can do at this point, what I'd like to do, and what I do in the clinic, is I'd like to try to compare this to something that we already know a lot about, something that maybe we can wrap our heads around to get a better idea of what's scary, what's really scary, and what's not scary. The thing that we have to compare this to, in my opinion, is probably the best, is the flu. influenza, something that visits us every year between October and April. There are a lot of similarities to the flu, and that's what I'm going to try to do right now. Coronavirus and flu are both viruses, and so by nature of their mechanics, we cannot treat them with antibiotics. Okay? They are not bacteria. The way that our bodies fight this is through our immune systems. Our bodies have to recognize the virus and then create antibodies to keep that virus from replicating and slowly let it fizzle out in the body. That process takes several days. For anybody who's had the flu in the last couple of years, that usually takes 5 to 7 days on average. Some people have a more protracted course, which can go up to 2 weeks. The coronavirus is behaving very similarly, okay? Another way that it's very similar is the spread of the virus, and I'm going to pause on that because I'm going to come back to that with a whole slide dedicated to that in just a second. But the spread is very similar. What we also know from a data and objective standpoint is the mortality rates, the deaths that it is associated with, and on the flip side, the survivability and recovery rates. But before I go into that, I would like to point out the obvious difference between flu and coronavirus, and that is we do not have a vaccine for the coronavirus at this time, okay? We do not know if one will be made. There is discussion, as you will read in the news, and when you read the CDC and the WHO's websites, there's discussion about the possible generation of a vaccine. But we do not know, and we certainly don't know about a timeline when that might be available. So it's one of those things that we're just going to have to kind of wait and see how things pan out. But to that end, even with the lack of a vaccine, which I know in itself is anxiety provoking to a lot of folks, it takes away a feeling of control for a lot of people. But even with that fact, as a physician, when I try to look at this, step back and objectively look at it, if you look at the numbers, and as of this morning, there was a little over 93,000 cases globally of confirmed coronavirus. There are just over 3,000 cases of death of those confirmed, okay? So that really puts the survivability or recovery rate of this illness right at around 96 or 97%, and that is without a vaccine or any medications to treat it right now other than treating symptoms, okay? And so when I look at it from that aspect and I compare it to flu, which is very similar, flu, the survivability and recovery rate is around 98 to 99%, and that is with a vaccine that we spend a lot of resources and money on every single season to combat, okay? So when I make that comparison, it does make me feel better as a clinician that I can give you a lot of reassurance as a patient in my office that although yes, it is a illness that is probably not very fun to have and endure, just like the flu, I think our community is going to recover from this, okay? The other similarity that's not on the slide, but I think is becoming more and more public knowledge is that the folks more at risk for complications and death, if you look especially in our country and the unfortunate cases that are in Kirkland, Washington, they are in the elderly. And it's not just the age that really puts these people at risk, it's unfortunately those individuals, the older we get, we do have more problems with pulmonary, lung disease, heart disease, and those are the two kind of illnesses that really get stressed even more when you put coronavirus on it. Next slide. The reason why it does put more strain on the heart and the lungs is because this illness primarily is an upper respiratory illness. The two signs and symptoms that people get invariably are fever and cough. And this is a little bit different than the flu because the flu affects many more systems than just the upper airway and providing fever. But those are the two hallmark symptoms of this illness. For people who have a more severe case and symptoms, they do develop shortness of breath. And that is the primary reason that people are having to be hospitalized. The overwhelming majority of cases are having mild to moderate cases, and those can be treated in their own homes as an outpatient with supportive medicines. Okay. Next slide. So transmission, this slide is key. If you know how it is spread, then you can combat it. You are empowered, and we'll go over the preventive strategies. And the preventive strategies actually make a lot more sense when you know how it is spread. Point blank, it is spread by people who are infected, delivering respiratory droplets, infected droplets from their airway, into the air and onto surfaces. The other way is that they rub their hands on their mouth, on their nose, and have those secretions touch other people or inanimate objects. All right? So again, it is respiratory droplets. So after that, there's 3 ways that a non-sick person can get these viral particles. The first way is a direct way. An example of that is if I'm sick, I cough or sneeze into my hand, and then I go shake somebody else's hand. Okay. Another direct way is if you have a loved one at home, if you kiss, or if you drink after in the same container. That is another very direct way of contracting the illness, okay, those viral particles. An indirect way, and this is thought to be a primary way, it is a little bit debated between the CDC and the WHO, but are inanimate objects. So if I cough or sneeze on this podium, for example, whoever gets up here next, don't put your hands on the podium, because that is an indirect way of getting those viral particles on your hand, and then you can transmit it to yourself. The third way is airborne aerosol. Okay, so if somebody coughs or sneezes in close proximity, and this is the key here. 3 to 6 feet is what the CDC and the WHO will say as far as the risk for contracting, breathing in aerosolized particles. Okay, that is the third way. Right? And this is going to be real key when we bring up one of the frequently asked questions, which is the use of masks. Okay, and I'll get to that in just a minute. Next slide, please. So if you know how it's spread, these best practices for prevention that we all have at our fingertips every day, literally, do make more sense. Okay, these have been put out through a lot of channels here locally. This is actually the copy that I copied from the CDC. Okay, if you watched the Ellen DeGeneres show yesterday, she actually had a parody on this. It was funny, but in the end, she did prove the point of hand washing. The best practices are this: try to avoid contact with sick people. Yourself, if you are not sick, try to avoid touching your mouth, your nose, and your eyes, because again, you could have particles that you picked up inadvertently from other surfaces, and that is a primary way that it can get into your body. Okay. So the next one is a big one, and I think this is probably something we could all do better in our community. Okay, and that is if we are sick, we should not go to work. If our children are sick, we should not go to school. And I recognize if they don't go to school, you will probably have to stay home with them. And I think that's okay. Because then my next comment is to our employers and our supervisors in our community. If we have individuals that are sick and with sick children, we should be able to say, it's okay to stay home with them, you should stay home, and maybe telework is possible, things like that. Okay. If we are sick, we try to cover our mouth and our nose with a tissue. Again, that way it's not getting on our hands and we're transmitting to other things. Then throw the tissue away. I think that makes sense. Washing our hands frequently is probably the best personal defense that we have. That is with soap and water. And again, I'm going to come back to this. Timing, I think, is crucial. I'll give you some examples. If you don't have soap and water available, the next best thing, according to the CDC and the experts, is going to be an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. If you want the technical answer, it should have at least 60% alcohol in it. Okay. But again, the best is warm water with soap. Hand washing timing. I think there's some obvious ones that maybe we're not too good at. Before we eat, before you put your hands on a utensil, before you put something in your mouth. Okay. When our children come home from school. Okay. That is a place, it's a high community area, a lot of traffic, they're touching things a lot of day. Before it gets in your house, the first thing that our children should do is probably wash their hands. That helps to keep your house safe. Okay. If you go out and run errands and you're touching doorknobs and door handles that you usually don't, and it's public space, maybe the hand sanitizer would be great right then, after you get done running errands, again, before you bring it into your home. Okay. So again, I think there's some key times that we could do these things to really better protect ourselves. Next slide. So what I've done is I've built some frequently asked questions, and these are ones that I've taken from the media, these are the ones I've taken from the CDC and the World Health Organization, and these are questions that I get a lot of time just about flu and other viral illnesses. So what should I do if I feel sick? The textbook answer, the right answer is go get yourself evaluated by a health professional, okay? And why this is going to become even more important in the future is As you saw those symptoms of coronavirus, they can overlap with other things, the common cold, influenza, even pneumonia, which is an entirely different illness, can mimic some of the signs of coronavirus. And so it behooves all of us, if we are sick, if our children are sick, our family's sick, we should go get evaluated by a healthcare professional. Okay. When should I go back to work after being sick? This is a popular one. General rule of thumb, anybody who has children at the CDC know this, if you or your child's had a fever within 24 hours, you should not go to work. As soon as the fever breaks, you wait 24 to 48 hours and then assess whether or not you should go back to work or school at that point. Should I wear a mask to prevent coronavirus? This is a huge one. As we all know, the shelves are becoming bare. I think Guthrie is having to restock their counters all the time with paper masks and gloves, etc. You should wear a mask only if you are sick. And again, if you go back to the spread of transmission slide, actually all three of those, the mask will prevent the spread from the sick individuals to the rest as far as aerosolizing it and transferring those droplets to an inanimate object. It is a physical barrier only, okay? So again, only wear a mask if you are sick. What should I clean my house with? This is the one I get a lot. I am not encouraging you to buy anything different, okay? But you should know if your cleaning product says cleaner, that helps to reduce the number and just remove viral particles off of surfaces. It does not kill viruses, okay? If your cleaner says disinfectant, that is a product that will kill viral particles. It is a question that I get a lot, okay? I think either or is a great strategy as long as we are using them frequently and often, especially on those common surfaces that we touch, faucets, countertops, doorknobs, a microwave door, things like that, okay? Another one is, how often should I wash my hand towels at home, okay? Probably every 24 to 48 hours. Warm water, normal detergent, bleach is not necessary. I know people will continue to use bleach, but that's your choice. Is there a seasonal component to coronavirus? This is an unknown, ladies and gentlemen. We do not have a season to compare it to. So like flu, which does have a very seasonal component, it kind of fades away a little bit in the summer, in the warmer months, but then it comes back. We don't know if coronavirus will have the same pattern. If we look back to SARS, after the spring and summer months and the weather did get warmer, SARS kind of fizzled out and burned itself out and really did not return. We do not know how coronavirus is going to act. We're going to have to kind of wait and see and track. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and advance the slide one more and leave us with some information. And then I do want to talk briefly about travel. Travel for everybody in this room and travel for our folks in uniform. So these are the pertinent phone numbers that you can text, and the Facebook page for information at Guthrie. They are primary resources when it comes to healthcare. If you would like to research more information on your own, I would strongly recommend these two entities. It is scientific, objective, and the information that they put on there is very good about saying what we know, what we don't know, and what is unknown. Okay. I'm going to leave you with that and talk about travel, and then we're going to open it up, I believe, to questions on any of the topics. So travel. Every single day, as I mentioned, we are analyzing and we are discussing as a command team and with all three organizations here on post. And we are following very strictly the CDC's guidance for travel. As of 2 weeks ago, the only travel restrictions really were to mainland China. Okay. As of this weekend, there are now travel advisories for countries that have had a very large increase in cases. That would be South Korea, Italy, Iran. And so because of that, we are having to analyze and make judgment calls on the travel of our troops. Okay. Before last Friday, anybody coming back from South Korea did not need to be quarantined. All they needed was a screening questionnaire to make sure that they were at low risk. And this was actually a redundant tool because they had already been screened both in Korea before they left and when they hit the U.S. airports here in the country. As of last night, we are going to, for anybody coming back from South Korea on any type of mission, we're going to have a 14-day quarantine. And the quarantine word is rather harsh. I think it imposes a very harsh kind of state in our mind. Really what we're looking at is 14 days at home to just self-monitor. In the event that they get sick, they are restricted from coming in contact with the greater community, but they can still be at home with their family. Okay. Should they get ill during those 14 days, they're going to be seeing us and they're going to be seeing Guthrie, and we'll be taking appropriate action to test them appropriately on whether or not they have coronavirus or something else. Okay. And so the word quarantine, really, I think in our minds, specifically for our soldiers coming back, should be equated to time at home. Okay. Today we do have a group coming back from the CENTCOM area, which has not been designated a high risk, and so they will not need quarantine. We do have some folks coming back in the next couple of weeks from South Korea from different missions, and they will need this 14-day period of time. Okay. And again, that is something that changes every single day, and so we will try to provide updates through the command channels when we get that information. And with that, I'm going to conclude and open it up to the group. Carl Lucas, do you have anything, sir? Yeah.
What is the length of time, let's say somebody presented to Betsy with symptoms, what's the length of time it would take for the diagnosis to be made?
So that's a great question. So if somebody presented with symptoms, how long would it take for the diagnosis to be made? So the probably first part of that answer would be, do we know that they've been to somewhere where they've been exposed or at risk? Okay. And so that will help us decide whether or not they need to be tested for coronavirus particularly. They will get diagnostic testing for things like flu, other things that cause the common cold, to try to figure out what the diagnosis is. And so that part of the diagnosis will be there kind of immediately, and the patient will know, have a good idea of what we think it is or what it is not. If it is somebody who's been exposed and shows symptoms, that is going to be grounds for actually needing to test them specifically for coronavirus, which is a unique test. That is something that has evolved in the last 2 weeks as well. 2 weeks ago, really, the Centers for Disease Control were the ones with all the kits and the testing ability. That has been expanded within this last week to about 40 labs across the country, one here in New York, and that is really headed and speared by the state health department. Okay? So to your question, particularly if somebody reported to Guthrie and we thought it was possibly a coronavirus, we would immediately call the state health department, who would basically use the county health department to come bring a kit to test. The turnaround time on that is going to be around 24 to 48 hours. Okay. Ms. Rourke.
If you have a family member who's being quarantined in their household for 2 weeks and they're failing, is the quarantine include the family, since we're not sure about the incubation period and transmission?
So that's a great question. And I think it's going to have to be also based on the questionnaire. Obviously, if I think right now it's probably the individual. If the individual turned sick, I think that then changes the ball game altogether. And then at that point, yes, the entire family has then been exposed to a first-degree source, and then they would have to also follow a quarantine to see if they manifest symptoms in 14 days. Other questions? Ma'am.
Talk about the test. Is it a blood test that's done?
It's a nasal swab now, and so it's swabbing the nose. It is similar to swabbing the nose for any other type of virus, but again, trying to identify the technology, it is a specific kit, but it's very similar to testing for other viruses.
Sir, I have a couple of questions for social media.
So a couple of questions.
A couple of questions from social media. What meds should I have on hand and how much?
So medications. So it's a bit of a broad question, so I'm going to give you a couple different answers. So if it is your routine medicines like high blood pressure medicines, thyroid medicines, those should not be affected, and you should stay on your regular schedule that you have with your healthcare provider, the pharmacy hours, and the pharmacy's way of doing business at Guthrie will not change on that. As far as other medicines for coronavirus, I would not go out and proactively buy any. And the reason I would say that, similar to masks and gloves and other items which we think may benefit us, we need to leave those on the shelves for people who actually get sick. In times where sometimes supply is outmatched by demand, one of the biggest tragedies is when people have resources but then don't use them and other people need them. And so I would encourage people, again, not to go out and proactively buy any type of medicine, to include your decongestants, your Tylenol, your ibuprofen, unless you really are sick.
Thank you. Should I stop eating out?
Should you stop eating out? Fantastic question.
Not me personally. No. I don't need that much.
We know how you like to eat out. So right now, we have no reason to believe that the coronavirus lasts very long on products. So one of the other frequently asked questions I get is, any product from China or South Korea, should I not touch it? No, we're talking minutes to hours that a virus can survive on food. Obviously, if somebody is sick in the kitchen at a restaurant, they could theoretically transmit virons to plates and things like that. Right now, we do not have any cases in this area. And so I don't think your risk for coronavirus is any greater risk than what it is for flu. And so again, it's something that we will continue to monitor over weeks, but right now I think your risk is not increased at all.
How will they treat our soldiers in a deployed environment if they get sick?
So great question. So the bottom line is that we're going to treat them there pretty much the same way we're going to treat them here. And so it's going to be first an evaluation for really how sick are they on the spectrum of symptoms. Is it a mild case? Is it moderate? Or are they actually having severe signs of shortness of breath and possibly pneumonia? And that's going to dictate whether or not they get treated there in their barracks, there in theater, or are they going to need to be escalated in care and medevac to Launchstool, for example, or back here to CONUS. And so the situation is going to be the exact same that we would have soldiers here at our troop medical clinic.
The next one kind of adds on to that. It's from the same person. If I get sick, will you send a Red Cross message to my soldier and allow them to come home?
Fair question. And so, again, trying to relate this to other illnesses we have, to include the flu. The command is going to take into consideration how sick you are as a spouse and as a caretaker, what assistance you need, and how grave is your situation, and how that fits into your family care plan. And so the commands, I know, are going to be just as supportive of this, if not more, just the same as any other illness.
And my last question is, at what point do things start closing down here on post if there are positive cases?
So great question, and that is going to be a week by week and really day by day assessment by us and the garrison. Just like when we think of closing down any service for any other reason, to include weather, that is a fine balance, of weighing the risk of putting other people at risk versus kind of the need to go on with life and to keep services going. And so that is a daily assessment that the garrison commander has to make, and we will continue to help him with that every single day.